All right, so we're going to look at the midpoint formula now. Okay, so the midpoint formula is written like this. We're going to take a look at how this might work. So the first points we're going to look at are the points A and B that I've plotted here. Okay, so plotting A and B, so there's the x-axis. The coordinates of that point are 1, 1, A. Coordinates of this point are 3, 1. The midpoint should be quite obvious here, that it's right in the middle. So if this is at 1 on the x and that's at 3 on the x, then the middle is going to be at 2. Because it doesn't move in the y direction, it should be fairly obvious that that point is 2, 1. Okay? So the midpoint is 2, 1. Just by looking at it. So we're going to check out this formula here to see how it works. Well, okay, so using the x1 plus x2, adding two x coordinates, 1 plus 3. Okay, so 1 plus 3 divided by 2, and 1 plus 1 divided by 2. Okay. Evaluate each one of those, and you get 2, 1. And that's the midpoint that we obviously got. Now, how is it that we get this midpoint? Well, what we're doing here is we're finding the middle of two numbers. So just looking at the x-axis here, we're looking at the average of the x values. So how do you find the average of two numbers? You add the two of them, so 1 plus 3, and you divide by 2. If one of them happens to be negative and it's over here, you're still going to add the two of them and divide by 2. Okay, and I'll show you in a bigger example. Okay, so in this case here, what we're doing is we're finding the average of the two x coordinates. In the picture, the x coordinates are 1 and 3. The average is 2. The y coordinates are 1 and 1. What's the average of two numbers that are the same? It's that number, 1. So it shouldn't change. Okay. Now let's look at something a little bigger, like this diagonal line. Okay, so the diagonal line CD here, not as easy to see the midpoint. It is right here, but how do we get that? Well, in order to get that, we need both the middle of the x direction and the middle of the y direction. So we're going to take the average of the x coordinates. And here, for these 2 points, the x coordinates are 1 and -2. So 1 and -2, the average is something right in the middle. In the middle of 1 and -2, there's a distance of 3 there, so it's going to be halfway between these two here, the 0 and the -1. So the average between 1 and -2 is -1/2. And then the y coordinates, well, they're 3 and -3. Well, the average of two numbers that are the same but opposite signs is going to be 0. Okay, so it's right in the middle there, and that's what we get. So this is the formula here. We're going to take the average of the two x coordinates, -2 and 1, and we get -1/2. Average of the y coordinates, and we get 0. Okay, so finding the midpoint is just finding the average of the given coordinates. Okay, and here are some examples of some given points. So you can pause and check them out if you need to.